Business news from the Capital Region. This is Washington Business Report with ABC7 national correspondent Rebecca Cooper.
Thanks for joining us for a fresh look at business and how it affects you. Coming up on today's show, Small Business Saturday. Was it a success? We'll have the numbers for you. Plus, what do Vox, Sweet Green, and Endgame have in common? The answer is huge investments in the region. But it's what they don't have in common that might be most interesting. And in the roundtable, we look at some of the week's winners and losers when it comes to issues impacting business and the economy. But first, this week, our one-on-one is a special 1+1, talking to two men who have enormous influence in the world of Washington business. One is a newcomer, having already made a big impact in Silicon Valley. The other has already achieved iconic status here. For almost 2 decades, Alex Orfinger led the way in showing our region is much more than just a government town. Now the longtime publisher of the Washington Business Journal has been promoted to oversee all American Business Journal publications nationwide as executive vice president for the company, tasked with showing other cities how Washington became the place known for business as much as government. And tapped to fill Alex's big shoes here, James McGregor, the man at the helm of the Silicon Valley Business Journal, who led the way in making immediate digital content a top priority for the newsroom and the readers. We've got them both here today in their first joint media appearance. Gentlemen, welcome. Alex, this was announced a while ago, but it took a while for us to be able to get both men in the same room at the same time. Let me first start by congratulating you. I've got to tell you, I was actually surprised, even though I know how big you are in this town, to find out from company executives that the Washington Business Journal is one of the most successful properties nationwide for American business journals. What makes a business newspaper successful in this town?
Well, we've been very lucky.
No, we haven't. They told me it was because of you. So tell me what you did.
We've been very lucky for the last 18 years. I've had a great team of people around us, and we've also been fortunate that Washington's a great business economy.
It is a great business economy, but who knew? And you really set out from the beginning to say there is a story in this town that is not being told. What made you realize that? You were in other successful cities that were known more for business, places like Atlanta.
Yes.
Didn't you think, no way am I going to Washington?
When I first came to Washington 18 years ago, when I told people that I was the publisher of the Washington Business Journal, they would laugh and they'd say, isn't that an oxymoron?
Exactly.
Business. And, so I made it our purpose at the Business Journal was really to bring about community for business and to do things that brought the business community together. Because unlike so many other regions around the country, Washington is a very complicated place with this enormous federal government presence, the international community presence, and then you had this business community. And I tell this funny story. When a CEO of a $50 million company walks into a room in Washington, they're the second most important person in that room if there's a U.S. Senator in the room.
If there's a 3rd district from Kentucky, no offense, 3rd District of Kentucky, congressman,
right.
Sometimes they lose sight. That's why I jumped at the chance to do this show, because there are some of the most incredible business leaders in the world
right.
in this town, and they get overlooked for people who aren't even getting anything done anymore.
So that's our central mission, was to shine a spotlight on the local business community and not get ourselves all confused and interrupted by the local government community.
Well, I give you kudos because you succeeded and you took it on at a time when Congress was well respected,
yes.
was getting things done.
Yeah.
Back in the days when I worked on the Hill and was proud of working there, but they're not getting it done now. So James, fast forward, I'm going to come back to Alex in a minute, but you're in a place known for business, Silicon Valley. You're doing well, and they say, come to Washington. You've got to fill big shoes. I said, Alex is important. When at one of the book of lists, they actually had a life-size head of him made out of olives and tomatoes made by Susan Laz, the great ritual caterers. What made you decide, okay, Washington is the place to be for business?
It's so interesting because in Silicon Valley, it's really defined as to what drives the local economy. It's technology and real estate. What's really interesting here in Washington, and I heard this before I arrived, and I've heard it as I speak with people now, is that there's really this search for the next thing for Washington. And is that technology, or is that healthcare, or is that education? And I think it's important for the Business Journal to play a key role in having that conversation and leading that conversation, and that's what made it appealing to me.
Alex, there's so many things that I love about the surprising nature of how big business is in Washington now. I love that we're a startup town, that they're seen as a startup town nationally. I always say on this show what a shock it is to me that we're a foodie town now, since we weren't for so many decades. What else is driving Washington forward right now?
I think one of the things, the enormous change is the rebound of the city. When you talk about the technology startups, there are hundreds and hundreds of startup companies, startup technology companies in the District of Columbia. You drive from west to east in the city, it's gone through a tremendous transformation. So we always, 15 years ago, you would talk about the donut of Greater Washington, where the city was the struggling entity. And now we have a region that is really powered by a very strong city center, with a lot of economic development, a lot of business development, a lot of people moving into the city. And I think it's going to make it a much healthier region overall.
James, talk to me about digital content. Alex was already starting this. Previously, they had already kind of rebirthed Washington Business Journal to be much more driven by immediate breaking news on the web. You really put that front and center in Silicon Valley. Talk to me about the changing nature of news and the immediacy that you all are putting there with digital content.
Well, look, the thing with content, whether it's digital, print, events, is that great content always wins. And what is different is the platform. What we found out in Silicon Valley is that you can't hold stories forever. The best story needs to get out in whatever way, whether that's print or digital or events. And what we learned was by engaging the audience immediately through digital, we could really determine what it was the audience wanted. Too often times in our business, the conversation's been one way. I'm going to tell you what you want to read. And the reality is that our audience, because of our e-newsletters and because of our web products, is allowed to engage in the conversation.
As a consumer, I worry about that because I know what I will pick to read over what I think I should read, and I always like to have a balance of both, but you guys are good on all fronts. So Alex, we don't have much time left. Tell me, now that you've got this big national platform, what were some of the most successful things that you did here that you're now taking nationally? And then the second question I want to ask you quickly, which cities are the most intriguing to you right now nationally that you're going to be taking on?
Well, I think, I'll just follow up on what James said. Content is king. You've got to have great content that really serves our reader. And I think the important piece that I learned in Washington was never to lose track of what was important to our readers. The central mission of the Business Journal was to help people in their business every day, helping them get ahead, giving them a lead, a tip, an opportunity to grow their business. You have to, no matter what platform you're on, you have to stay true to that. What cities are great?
Which ones are you? When
I'm working in 40 different cities, and I think they're all terrific.
Oh, come on.
I'm going to be like the Olympics.
I knew that would be
they're all great.
Okay, well, then you gave me just enough time to have us pull up a picture we pulled up of you to show just how influential you are in this town. Thanks to your outstanding staff. I'll say one of the reasons you hired great reporters and given them a lot.
Gosh.
But look at this, Alex Orfinger. Look at the difference in hair and everything else. He was a player back in the day. I think this was when Hillary Clinton was First Lady, and you were bringing the federal government together with the city government together with the business leaders. So you've had a big impact for a long time.
Thank you very much for that.
But you get cuter every year, Alex Orfinger.
I just get older every
James
year.
McGregor, by way of Silicon Valley, and our executive producer, Tracy Madigan, likes the fact that you two are originally a Canadian.
Yes, we are.
And we're happy to have you here in Washington.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Making your imprint felt here.
Thank you.
Thanks to you both. We look forward to having you both back on the show again.
Thank you.
And coming up, the big box stores bombed, but small business numbers were up. We'll tell you one big holiday surprise coming up after the break. Stay tuned.